This is Ed. I'm in San Diego today, and welcome to Global TV Talk Show. We're joined by Kathy Barrow, who's in Mexico City, as you could tell. It's beautiful surroundings there, and she's going to talk to us about music and also about living in Mexico City. And also with us is Emily Bron in the Toronto area, and she's going to talk to us today specifically about her traveling as a single woman in Mexico. And as you can see, the background, international lifestyle consulting. Emily is a trusted consultant to many people about buying or investigating the idea of retiring or working remotely, buying property in Mexico and other places. Welcome, Emily.
Hello, everyone. Happy to see my friend Kathy and you, Edwin, as usual.
Thank you. This is great. Yeah, we've been doing this a long time now already, and a lot of megabytes. So thank you. Traveling and living as a single woman. Okay. Now, Kathy, you've been in Mexico City a long time. Mexico City is a big place. So what part of town are you in?
I'm actually outside of Mexico City. It's about an hour. It's called Toluca. It's in the state of Mexico. And people look at me and they say, the state of Mexico. And I'm like, yeah, Mexico does have states, and one of them is called Mexico. So that's where I live. Yeah.
Yeah, now that's big, and that's the central district. So, without expert knowledge, the surface knowledge is that there's so many people and smog and danger, but it's not true, is
it? How hot has it been where you guys are living? It's been very nice here. I'll just put it that way. We're about 8,000 feet high, and so as you can see, I'm dressed with my jacket and my gloves on because it's pretty cool here.
Yeah. So okay, so 8,000 feet. That means that you're not in a mountainous area, but you're on a mountain. So so you're in the flat area.
I'm in the valley. Yeah. I'm in the valley of a mountain. Yeah, and there's a volcano on the other side of it.
Yeah, hopefully dead. So so your profession is music, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Viva culture. So what kind of music? Classical.
Classical music, exactly. Yep.
Right, and you work in a symphony?
I work in the State of Mexico Symphony Orchestra, but I also have my own project outside of it, which is a chamber music society.
Chamber means a small group?
Chamber is a small group. A symphony orchestra is, tradition says that it's from about 67 above. A philharmonic orchestra is smaller, and a chamber group is up to about 15. 15 is about the limit for a chamber group. So from 1 to 15 is a chamber music concert.
And so basically it's classics, right? It's although you probably touch on some contemporary stuff, it's mostly the original stuff.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Our Mexican concert, we are playing pieces from the last century. I mean, some were written in like 1980. So yeah, a lot of the pieces that we play for our Independence concert are much newer.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, so in your area where you're living in Toluca, so in LA, in Beverly Hills, Hollywood area, where I used to live for many years, there's an area called Toluca Lake, and that's where Bob Hope estate was, and that's right near the Hollywood studios.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's very fun.
Yeah, Spanish influence, Mexican influence there. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about people who live in your neighborhood. Are you the only American there?
There's not many Americans actually living in. I live in the historic center of Toluca. There's not many Americans here. There's millions in Mexico City, but there's not many in Toluca. Although we have some of the biggest factories in the country here. We have Chrysler, Bayer, Nestle, Those are the huge factories that are on the highway leaving Toluca. So I think we're the second biggest manufacturing state in the country outside of Monterey.
Interesting. Emily, have you been to Toluca?
No, I'm still looking forward to meet Kat in Toluca. I just actually learned a little bit more about Toluca because I knew the second biggest manufacturing state in Querétaro, but I understand, and Puebla, it's another one that actually Mexico, it's a huge country and has several, clusters of industrial activity. And Toluca, it's one of them. And actually Toluca is the capital of the Mexico state and even has own airport. But somehow Mexico is so huge that we didn't met yet personally with Kathy, but we know each other for more than a year from the different networking. I was thinking that the best maybe for our today's conversation would be Kathy input on how to live as a single woman. I don't know if you were always single, but from my perspective, how single woman and why single woman like to live in Mexico. And I can have a little bit pre-story because when I several times ago I read actually articles that in Alamos, I think it's Sonora State, there is a city, Alamos colonial city, which specifically attract single English-speaking women. And I was very surprised. And actually, it was on my itinerary actually to visit, but I didn't get to Sonora as well next time. But from this point, I started to think, okay, so Mexico is probably not so dangerous country. It's a huge country. If there is specifically city even for single English speaking expats, by the way, not only Americans, Canadians, and Europeans. So there's something in this city and obviously in Mexico which attract people, women in particular. And from my personal experience traveling already, I don't remember how many times by myself, in Mexico, I can tell that yes, you need to be prepared, meaning you need to do your research, you need to understand where you're going, specifically when you don't speak Spanish like me. Katia is from different league because she's local Mexican. But from my experience, I learned it's okay. And I know how to travel myself by buses, like different companies. And I know how bus companies are comfortable and even competing in between like companies on a comfort level. I feel pretty comfortable to travel by air. Like there's many international and local airports. And I know from my other living experience that yes, there are events here and there, but actually, if you understand where you're going, if you open and have correct information, Mexico is not kind of less safe than I would say even California, even United States. And Kathy, I think Kathy, you were born in New York, correct?
I was born in Missouri and I lived in New York, yeah.
Yes, so even in California, like in our cities we are living, we need to know places where it's better not to go at nighttime maybe. And there are practically very nice and safe and pleasurable areas as well. So here was a topic, and because I know that people, expats, always concerned about safety, and it's understandable when you are a new country, new culture, don't speak English and there's a lot of publicity for years speaking about Mexico cartels. And yes, cartels exist. I will not say it's not. And about things happening here and there. And even recently in Baja California, I know it's what, concerns some Californians, and I'm concerned as well. But I understand that it's a big city. It's a big country with different areas, different regions, and things happen. Yes, things happen. And the more I'm traveling, the more comfortable I feel in Mexico. But I decided that Kathy, my friend Kathy, might be the best example as a woman actually expat living for what, 35 years in Mexico. And
Yep.
Kathy lived through different period because historically, yes, it's a pretty big period to have observation about, things happening politically, socially, and Kathy Mexicans for many years and still has her perspective as expat, correct? I don't know now you're more expat or Mexican, but actually you have several backgrounds which I really trust in regard to this topic. Not only this, but I think you might have interesting insights from your experience and experience of like other expats or just people living around you in Mexico.
Kathy?
First of all, I'd like to start with the buses. When you live on Mexican buses, you have no idea that American buses are different. Um, Buses here, we have like 4 different levels, and there's this bus, it's called an ETN. They have their own private waiting room, and you can get, they're like double-decker buses, and you can sit by yourself or you can sit with another person. You can choose your seat on the bus, and they're absolutely fantastic. And so you can travel all night on one of these buses, and it's not like, I'm sorry to say it, it's not like being on an American bus. The bus stations are much nicer. You feel much more safer in a Mexican bus station than you would in an American one. A lot of people here don't have cars, and so we're more used to American American transport. The Mexico City subway, I'm terrified of subways because of something terrible that happened to me in a New York subway, not because of anything that happened here. They were built by the French. They were a copy of the French subway system, and so they're unbelievably clean and very well kept. And so, if you're thinking about like a New York subway or something like that, it's very different here. Okay,
Happy to hear that. I'm
Yeah.
excited to learn more about that.
Yeah. So, not speaking Spanish is a disadvantage here because there's a lot of places you can't go. Just because you can't get there or you don't have the way to communicate to get to these places. The Americans are very well taken care of, and they are kind of like in China. The Americans are kept in places, and it's hard to get off the beaten path unless you're speaking Spanish. One time I was on a plane from Los Cabos to Toluca, and they actually like stopped the plane on the runway, and they got on the plane. They said, "Are you sure you want to go to Toluca? Are you on the right plane?" Okay, because there's no Americans living in my city. So because of the bad publicity, Americans are very, very well taken care of here. Precisely, so there will be not such bad publicity. The embassies take very good care of their people. If there's a case of something happening to an American, the embassies are all over it. And so, the bad guys tend to leave the Americans alone because of the publicity.
Isn't that interesting? Wow.
20% of Mexican income is from tourism. And so people don't touch that.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's different. I actually feel safer in most parts of Mexico than I have in Paris.
Let me
Because
ask you about your music business. And do you play in Central City, Mexico City, or do
we
you
play in
stay in?
Mexico City about once a month. We travel all over the place. When I first got to the orchestra 35 years ago, we played in churches. And that was really, really fun. You'd have like thousands of people and there was one time it was just so packed that there were like these two kids sitting next to me, basically in the orchestra. They were just kind of like, and so they were like, "Are you there? Are you there on that part of the page?" And I'm like, move the finger a little bit, and yeah. So I mean, it was an amazing way to get to see. There's the American part of Mexico, and that starts basically from north of Mexico City up. And then you have the Mexican part of Mexico, which starts from Mexico City and goes down and does not include Cancun. Okay. And that's the prehistoric part. The food's different, the culture's different, and everything's a little bit different about it. It's a much older feel. 100 years doesn't feel like much, but when you're living in a country that's 100 years older, it feels a lot different.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, so myself, I've been mostly a tourist in and out of the the main airport in Mexico City, but and the only place that I've been, actually, I've been in Santa Fe and then Palenque, and I know both of those are international, i.e. American oriented. And other than in Baja, which I've been to 100 times, and Los Cabos, Mazatlan,
You've been to Mazatlan. Mazatlan's different, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Ixtapa
Ixtapa, yeah.
and Zihuatanejo, the tourist areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've we've been to all of those, and Cancun a long time ago though, not for about 10 years.
Cancun is changed. All Riviera Maya drastically changing. And I can tell that I started to discover Mexico actually from Riviera Maya. It's close to our, it's our coast. And every time I'm traveling to central Mexico, to Baja, to Mazatlan area, I see how different is culture, how different is country, weather, food. It's actually what really attracted me to Mexico versus, say, other Latin American country, which obviously have their own charm,
Right, right.
but Mexico is huge, big, different
Yeah.
culture, interesting.
Well, let's see, probably around 10 years ago, we went on a holiday. Joanne and I went on a holiday. Actually, it was between Christmas and New Year's, to Acapulco, and that was a wonderful experience, and very safe. And we didn't have any problems whatsoever. Um, and while walking around and, on the beach, into the Walmart and the different stores, in the more upscale area. Um, we really like that. But since then, there's been all this other violence and seemingly bad news, so we stayed away.
Yeah. I've lived here for 35 years. There was one bad point about 20 years ago where one person got kidnapped in the orchestra. When I lived in New York, every single person I knew except myself had been mugged. Okay. So I feel a million times safer here than there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so you're appreciated more than a target, more than being a target.
Yep.
Yeah, good.
I
Yeah.
have a question. Sorry. Kati, are you considering yourself after so many years living in Mexico, actually Mexican, American, or still mix?
I consider myself a Mexican with an American education.
I'm satisfied with the answer.
Yeah. So Emily, in your recent travels and investigation in Mazatlan and some of the higher elevations around central Mexico that you and I have talked about in the past, does the experience of Kathy resonate with you when we think about your experiences in the villages where you have spent some time in the last 6 months?
First of all, I was not yet in Toluca, and I know that Toluca is higher than, say, Querétaro or Aguascalientes. I spent some time, and I spent some time in Mexico City, but again, it's a huge city. And I cannot compare my experience of, being week or two in this other place with Kati experience when you're living, all seasons. Because I was enjoying, specifically at winter time, going from Canada to sunny areas of central Mexico State, fresh air, sun, I feel really good, elevated, by mood and physically. But I understand that for some people, again, they prefer, if they have some heart condition or yes, or maybe a respiratory condition, they need to adjust. They need time to adjust to this particular area. And I always remind people, like asking about this point. But after adjustment, I feel really good. But my next plan actually to spend winter in Mexico, in central Mexico state, because I know it's completely different from Riviera
Cold.
Maya.
It's cold.
It's
It's cold
cold, and
in
I've heard that
Mexico.
it's cold, but I would like to feel how this cold will affect my bones. But like what is important for me, actually amount of sun, but I and dryness. But it's because I know I'm not good with humidity. I need sun, and I don't mind cold. But how it's actually feeling, I would say you after spending.
But that's an interesting point because you don't mind cold, but see, you guys are used to walking into a heated house, okay? When it is cold outside, it's cold inside.
I
Because
know I did this
98% of Mexico, so when it's like, 30 degrees outside, it's like 40 in your house. Okay, so that's something to really get used to. But a wonderful, absolute wonderful thing about living here is I think maybe this morning it was cloudy. Okay, this morning it was cloudy. I don't remember the last time it was. Maybe it's cloudy about 10 mornings a year.
Really? Oh my God.
Raining in the morning, it's like, oh, this is terrible. It's raining in the morning. And I was with a friend talking to a friend in Ireland once, and I said, it's been raining for 7 mornings in a row. And he said, oh, poor you, come to Ireland. So I mean, this is 7 days of rain is just absolutely unheard of. It'll happen 2 or 3 times a year. Once every 2 or 3 years. I'm sorry, put it that way. So you always wake up with the sun.
So what about this idea of heat in the house?
Oh.
It doesn't happen? Do you
Well,
ever have the
well,
fireplace or what?
see, the thing is that we're one of the highest cities in the country, and there's a standard for building. So if you build a new house, yeah, you could probably, fix it so that it's got heat in it. But we're just kind of used to the cold. That's why, and every networking meeting, Emily, you've ever seen, I'm always in a jacket because it's always cold in my house. And I have a suitcase of short sleeve shirts that I bring to the beach because I never wear them here. It'll get into the 70s, 80s like between like 2 and 4 in the afternoon, and then it'll go back down. Because when you're at 8,000 feet, the sun goes away. That's it. The temperature plummets. If you've ever been to Cairo in January, Cairo, when you go and see the pyramids at night, they have blankets on every chair, and you're freezing because it's desert and the sun's gone. So it's a similar experience.
Isn't that interesting?
From Toluca airport, you can fly and be in the beach of Mazatlan and Puerto Vallarta.
2 hours.
Kind
Well, you
of
can drive. It's 4 hours this way, 6 hours the other.
okay, you can
Yeah,
drive.
so you
Yeah,
can
But
good.
take a
either way.
bus.
It's faster than flying, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, faster than flying.
Well,
Interesting.
because you have to get to the airport, you have to wait 2 hours, and the airport's outside of town. If you're just driving, you just get there. Yeah.
It
So
was
we have about 5 or 6 minutes remaining on this abbreviated schedule today, and I welcome you guys to come back in a couple of weeks or next month. But let's sum up, and Kathy, talk to us about how you feel about and your experiences. As I understand, you just make things happen for yourself. But being in Toluca and being in the atmosphere that you've just described, sounds like it's really ideal for you.
It's fantastic. There are other cities that are a little bit warmer, but I prefer if you have to work, it's better to be able to put on a sweatshirt than to be hot, and then what do you do with heat, right? And the sun, as Emily was saying, it's fantastic. I mean, having the sun, and then you guys, when you get rain, it's like rain for 5 or 6 days. Here, it rains for 2 hours in the rainy season, and then in the non-rainy rainy in the dry season, it doesn't rain, right?
Here in San Diego, we want it to rain.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
no water.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's coming from, but we need
Yeah.
rain bad.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a city in Monterey that was actually without water for 17 days, and they put like big water
yeah.
tanks on corners so the people could come and get the water. So that's the first time that's happened. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so is the music in the music that you play and in the symphony and the chamber, um, is it global, international, the same music that we played in, say, Prague?
oh yeah, and the interesting thing is that Mexico, I have 2 seconds here. I'll tell you a quick story. About 50, 60 years ago, There was the head of the opera company in Mexico City, and he said, Mexico doesn't have an identity. So he sent these guys off to beaches to find some songs. And this one guy, Moncayo, he came back and he wrote the Huapango, which is basically Veracruz songs. But the interesting thing is that you can't play this piece, and it's the second national anthem without a symphony orchestra. It's got harps, it's got 2 trombones, it's got like 3 trumpets, it's got a huge string section. You cannot be Mexican if you don't have an orchestra. And I think that one piece has brought classical music to life in Mexico, because you really can't have this whole Mexican, you can't celebrate Independence Day if you don't have the Huapango. I have a version for quartet, but it's not a quarter as powerful as what the original version is. And if he'd written it for like a group of mariachis, I think the symphony orchestras wouldn't be as prominent as they are.
Interesting, isn't it? Fascinating.
Mexicans love music. Mexicans love music.
Mexicans are very musical. Like, it's what I noticed. Like in musical small bands, you have in every even small city, yes, and people like to sing, and it's what really attracted me from cultural perspective.
One of the best singers in the world, opera singers, is Mexican. He's one of the most famous opera singers in the world, and he's actually, I think he's from Veracruz, near that area. Yeah.
This is an education. I'm learning so much from you guys. Wow.
Thanks.
Right. Well, thanks for being on Global TV Talk Show. And this is an intercultural learning experience. And who would have thought that that's what we'd be doing today? And so I welcome you, Kathy, to come and, consider playing something, when you feel like it.
I can actually send you some videos. One of the things that I'm working on is making classical music, I wouldn't say interesting, but different, modernizing it. So I've just covered my office in green screens. And what I do is I record my quartet with a green screen, and then I just put them anywhere. So I just did a piece by Gershwin, and I have the whole collage of the United States running behind Gershwin. And then I did the Bach Double Concerto, and I've got pictures of Germany interspersed with churches. And so that's what I'm doing. So you get a visual feel of what the music makes me feel.
Emily,
I can pass it on to you,
yeah, thank you. So Emily, when's your next trip?
I'm planning for winter, actually. And despite Kathy saying it would be very cold, but Kathy, we should meet this winter in real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yes, I'm still here because, home, family, and other matters, and actually business-wise, but winter will be my time now, experience, like to have several months. It's what I want, not to hop on, hop out.
Yeah, great.
Snowbird. Snowbird, you want to be a snowbird. Yeah.
Thank you. Someday we're going to meet in person.
Sure. Looking forward.
Yeah, somewhere, maybe in Mexico.
San Diego is so close. You just fly to Tijuana and it's like a 20-minute bus over the border. I've done that.
Yeah. In fact, we have flown out of the Tijuana airport. It's a very modern, nice airport. It's got a border crossing just about a half hour from here.
And I believe that Kathy can share many stories, and I'm learning from Kathy a lot, but even I knew how Mexicans are family oriented, how, the value of friendship and really community involvement. And no, it's very important factor, specifically when people are thinking about relocation, from my perspective, correct?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I want you to contact Emily Bron. That's EmilyBron.com. And you'll be really impressed with this person once you get to know Emily Bron. She's a wealth of information and guidance for people who are afraid to go somewhere. And she's done it. And so she can give you the experience. Kathy, thank you. Nice to meet you again.
Very nice to see you again. Thanks for the invitation, Emily.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. See you on Global TV Talk shows someday. Again.
Next month.
Thank you.